That's just one thing that this motel story made me think of. There were lots more. I could start talking and still be talking, and it'd be 5 o'clock, and I wouldn't have read Ezekiel Kralen's story, which I'm going to do instead of babbling at you about motels. My story would make O. Henry proud is the title of this story by Ezekiel Kralen, another in the series of the story of his frenemy, in San Francisco. Deke is his friend's name, meth head, or something like it on the streets, who has now a place to live in a little cabin or some kind of government-subsidized housing. And he brings the dogs around, and Ezekiel can pet them, and in exchange he gives Deke money and charges all of his electronic devices in his apartment upstairs, which he's not allowed to bring the dogs into, and that's why Deke has the dogs in the first place. Okay, so with all that in mind, Ezekiel Kralen wrote, email correspondence, February 26th. Subject, another amazing meetup, continued. Date, February 26th. I know it isn't. It's the Pick and Pay store, he quipped, and I guffawed as the gate closed behind me. A minute later, I returned with one cami bandana and another red on black paisley right when I was about to say goodbye. Good night. He then asked if I have a bungee cord so he can strap the speaker onto the toy car's handle. I don't know, Deke, I replied. Let me check. I rummaged a bit back hovel, and to my surprise I found 2 bungee cords lying around, one 3 feet in length, the other 5. He struggled with the speaker to pull the longer cord around, then suddenly it snapped from his hand, and the 40-pound monster landed on the concrete with a crash and fell over. Fuck it, was all he said, and lifted the speaker to try again, this time with success. The speaker seemed no worse for the mishap, for when he turned it on, it blasted gangsta rap loud and clear, rippling up and down the block like the slosh of a sudden tsunami. Eager for him to truly depart at this point, I crouched down to give the poochies a few more hugs and kisses before they vanished into the night, and I collected the comforter, pleased as punch that we had a perfect meet-up, and he showed much appreciation for my friendship the entire time. He didn't even try to press me for more money or have me charge any devices. Who is this new Deke? Subject, another amazing meetup, date February 27th, nighttime. Watson wrote, boy, he sure has you running up and down those stairs. I replied, the exercise is good for me, but more importantly, small sacrifice to pay for the pup's happiness. Watson wrote, it's good to imagine him sleeping on a bed under a roof, doggies alongside. I replied, it certainly is, and I also gave him a new sleeping bag so the doggies can have super fluffy comfort in their new digs. Watson wrote, you can take full credit for it. None of it would have happened without your unwavering patience, courage, forbearance, gumption, stick-to-itiveness, and bodhisattva premise. I replied, thank you, and it looks like Deke knows that too, considering his vastly improved behavior since he's moved into a tiny cabin village. The many challenges he's hurled at me have only served to make me a better person, thanks to applying my premise, and it's the boundless love of Flacco and Lucky that made this fairy tale come true. An incredible story that would make O. Henry proud. Tomorrow's another stupid bedbug treatment day, so I'll be outside in the cold, damp weather for 5 hours or so. But knowing how well things are turning out for Deke and Brindlekin warms my heart so much that even that won't dampen my spirit. Subject, rain, bedbugs, and scooter date, February 27, nighttime a bit later. Attached is a screenshot of today's text message to Paolo, the exterminator, telling him I'll be home to let him in. Since the building manager is in absentia, I must be there to unlock my door, then remain until Paolo departs to lock it. That's about a 20-minute wait while I loiter in the hallway, but a gross inconvenience for me, and invasion of my privacy. The last thing I wanted regarding pest treatment was to be around when the exterminator arrives, but look what's happened. Watson, I have no choice. Kevin's evil shadow stretches o'erlong. The shabby condition of my room is a humiliation for me to bear when it comes to unwelcome visitors. Here's where I live. Step right on in. Don't be alarmed. There is also the matter of dealing with someone not so bright face to face, the kind of people I do my best to avoid, but there you go. They're forced upon me on a frequent basis. This includes, of course, Kevin himself and the maintenance fellow, as well as Paolo. Bad enough to have to conceal my low-income status without having people financially better off enter my room, not to mention this lawsuit, which also demands I expose my poverty to an audience in order to win my case and have the hounds return. An audience that perhaps is of the conservative, even Republican ilk, who scorn and abuse the disadvantage every chance they get, including the judge, who will most likely be pro-landlord. Then there's Scooter. He's back to whistling and hollering up at Carlson's window these past few days. Today he's come by the building at least 5 times, disturbing the peace, and forcing me to step away from my window because I don't need the prick to stare up at me. Feels like I'm being stalked, and in a way I am. 2 nights ago, as I stepped inside after tending to Deke and pups, Scooter came down the stairs right when I entered the gate, so I was coerced into the unpleasant situation of holding the gate open as he exited. He was just too near for me to let the gate close. I'd have had to force it shut with my hand, which could trigger hostility directed at yours truly anyway, so again, I had no choice. Here's a sound bite of his whistling and calling up to Carlson. Now, imagine him doing that repeatedly 3 or 4 times, 5 or 6 bouts a day, sometimes late at night. He has the entry code, so why doesn't he just come inside and knock on the skanky faux bohemian's door? It would spare us all his piercing whistles and boisterous hoots. I suspect Kevin's poor decision to rent to Carlson was inspired by his senility. It's been very cold and rainy all day, with the occasional break. Some thunder now and then. Not much. I imagine tomorrow will be the same, and I'll have to be outside to suffer it. I hope I don't get struck by lightning. That was a whopper 2 nights ago, so close to my window. Again, no choice. Forced on me. But at least I don't have to worry about the hounds, and now we have no hot water, which started a week ago. First the water was cold in the morning, but later in the day it was hot. Gradually we'd get less hot water each day, until today it's been nothing but cold. So I probably won't even be able to take a hot shower before I leave my room to the exterminator. Marshall's reading of my latest tale was superb as usual, so I'm glad for that. And this just happened, another reason I don't care to wander the streets anymore, besides the cold rain. KRON4 news article, heavy gunfire in broad daylight, reported in San Francisco's SF's Soma. But I guess to make up for such bad news, there's a link at the bottom about radiant heaters. Speaking of Darley, which we weren't, it includes a list of recommended ones to buy, down to $50. I like the Pelonis brand for $80 because it has 3 heat settings, 1500, 900, and 600 watts. The lower the wattage, the lower the electricity bill. All the others seem to be 1500 watts only. Signed Zeke K. Holmes. Addendum. Add to my miseries the leaking radiator valve, which I had resolved some months back by replacing the smaller plastic tub with a larger one, so I'd no longer have to get up at a wee hour to empty it to prevent possible overflow. But this was before the great deluge, starting in late December and ending in mid-January, because ever since the radiator's been active 24/7 due to the manager being on his deathbed, so he can't turn the radiator off during the daytime. The large tub was great because I need not worry about it filling up every few hours. It would take a whole 6 hours or nothing at all if the weather wasn't cold enough to activate the radiator. But now that it's constantly on, I have to empty that bin several times a day and twice at night. So instead of making my life a bit easier by using a larger tub, I'm having to empty it much more often than I did with the smaller one. And to make matters worse, when I'm away for 5 hours due to bedbug treatment, the tub could overflow if I don't remember to empty it just before stepping out. But even if I do, there's still some risk it'll fill up sooner than that and spill over. As I've said once before, I'll say it again, Kevin's evil shadow stretches o'er long. Subject. Besides the heavy gunfire incident south of Market, date February 28th. This, much closer to home, on the other side of DUBOCE Park. I don't know how to pronounce that name. SF Standard article. Armed robbers stormed his packed San Francisco coffee shop. Now he wants action. So much for my days hanging out in cafes, along with exploring the various neighborhoods when the street scene was my social life for decades, along with coffee houses. This pandemic put a big kibosh. I know that's how you're supposed to say it, and so that's the way I say it, but it's not the way I like it. So I'm going to start that sentence again and say it the way I like it. Sorry. The pandemic put a big kibosh on the cafes, and this increased violence on the streets has put the final nail in the coffin. Another bedbug treatment day where I'm pushed outside into the cold and rainy elements. There is only a Starbucks to hang out in the inner sunset now that Tarte to Tarte is shut down. Maybe I'll just be a ghost wandering around the Castro for 5 hours and spend some time in the Harvey Milquetoast Library while I'll have to guard my Chromebook with my life, with scary vagrants occupying the space. Stinky, too. Fights break out there sometimes. Then around the corner on Market Street is Pete's Coffee, which will probably be too crowded to find a seat, and possibly an armed robbery or two for the price of a hot cocoa. Time for me to rent a spiffy studio apartment in virtual reality in a nice virtual district with nothing but friendly virtual residents, over half of which will be AI-generated and have nothing but stupid things to say. Like so many real humans, it's enough to turn a person with any brains and heart into a virtual serial killer, stalking the GUI chat rooms for their next victim. Among Us. To be continued.